The government has a supplemental sentencing memorandum for J6er Andrew Johnson. They are wanting to increase his sentence by what would be 50% of what they originally asked for. And the reasons include violations of a protective order. Now, Andrew Johnson has rushed to social media to talk about how he didn't know about this protective order that has been in place since January 2023. But the existence of this order can be found online. He should have known, and it's very common for J6 cases. Now, in this document, the government also makes many other claims about him that he is denying on social media as well. So we're just going to be reading what the government has to say in this government sentencing memorandum, and we are going to have to take it that the defendant is disagreeing with it. Just know that in the back of your head, and let's get into this. So for the reasons set forth herein, the government requests that this court sentence defendant Andrew Johnson to 18 months of incarceration, 12 months of supervised release, a fine of $2,336, and $500 in restitution. And if we go down here, you see the government previously requested that this court sentence defendant Andrew Johnson to 12 months of incarceration. So they went from 12 months to 18 months. That is a 50% increase. Factual and procedural background, so that they're thankfully not going to go through all of it again. Attack on the U.S. Capitol. Defendant Johnson's role in January 6th attack on the Capitol include breaching the U.S. Capitol building through a broken window, encouraging other rioters, belligerently accosting police officers, and rioting for over 4 hours, stopping only due to arrest. Defendant Johnson's statements on social media, including referring to himself as an American terrorist and proud J6er, communicating threats with firearms in violation of his release conditions, prolifically spreading false information, and calling for a second January 6th. Defendant Johnson's non-compliance with his release conditions ranging from possession of cyclobenzaprine, a controlled substance, driving under the influence, resisting an officer, retail theft, failing to check in with Pretrial Services Agency for the District of Columbia. He was very angry with the retail theft accusation as well. Defendant Johnson's violation of this court's protective order by unlawfully retaining and disseminating sensitive and highly sensitive discovery materials and using such information to promote false theories and endanger others. See U.S. motion to show cause for violation of protective order and release conditions, revoke release pending sentencing, and supplement sentencing memorandum filed under seal on July 29, 2024. Now, this is not obviously under seal. This is public. Statutory penalties and sentencing guidelines and guidelines analysis. By unlawfully retaining and disseminating highly sensitive discovery materials in violation of court order, Defendant Johnson has now obstructed the administration of justice and is subject to a 2-level upward adjustment of sentencing. The defendant willfully obstructed or impeded, attempted to obstruct, impede the administration of justice with respect to the investigation, prosecution, or sentencing of the instant offense of conviction. And since filing the defendant's sentencing memorandum, PSA identified 2 additional violations of Defendant Johnson's release conditions for failing to check in with PSA. It's July 8th and July 22nd. And obstructive conduct related to a defendant's offense of conviction and any relevant conduct. Johnson willfully obstructed or impeded or attempted to obstruct or impede the administration of justice. First, Defendant Johnson threatened, intimidated, or otherwise unlawfully influenced a witness, directly or indirectly, or attempted to do the same. Defendant Johnson's released names of 4 FBI special agents who have worked on Defendant Johnson's case. This was not mere benign mention of special agents who worked on his case. Defendant Johnson is promoting false theories that January 6, 2021 was staged by the government while simultaneously releasing the names of special agents. The release of their names endangers them in their investigations. The fact that this occurred after Defendant Johnson pleaded guilty is immaterial. Second, Defendant Johnson's violation of this court's protective order is akin to one of the specific examples listed in the commentary USSG 131C.1, failing to comply with a restraining order or injunction issued pursuant. Therefore, the appropriate offense level computation, so they add the offenses there. Accordingly, his total offense level is 12, and his guidelines imprisonment range is 12 to 18 months, and they're going for the 18. Sentencing factors under 18 U.S.C. 3553. Johnson's additional misconduct related to 518 U.S.C. sentencing factors, characteristics of the defendant, promote respect for the law, afford adequate deterrence, protect the public, and avoid unwarranted sentence disparities. Defendant Johnson's history and characteristics. Defendant Johnson has a long criminal history and has been in non-compliance with his conditions of release. Defendant Johnson's most recent egregious violation of this court's protective order confirms his current unwillingness to conform to court directives and consider rehabilitation in light of his criminal conduct at issue of this case. The need to promote respect for the law. Defendant Johnson's flagrant disregard for this court's authority also undermines the rule of law. Not only did Defendant Johnson disseminate highly sensitive materials, but he also thumbed his nose at the fact that he was flouting this court's protective order. By concurrently disseminating highly sensitive material as well as correspondence that confirmed the highly sensitive nature of the material itself, Defendant Johnson promoted disrespect for this court and the law, nor does this content of such material truly matter. In this context, there exists a process to litigate the scope of protected material, a process that's been understood and agreed to, and yet the defendant did not care. That level of defiance alone is worthy of additional consideration and punishment. The need for a sentence to afford an adequate deterrence. Throughout January 6, 2021 prosecution, law enforcement officers and many other persons have been targeted, attacked, and harassed. This court must fashion a sentence to protect the public from further crimes of Defendant Johnson, who may be in unauthorized possession of additional highly sensitive material. While Defendant Johnson is entitled to believe what he wants, his astonishing lack of remorse in attempts to undermine the crime that he pled guilty in the first instance suggests he is not adequately deterred from such future conduct. With regards to general deterrence, Defendant Johnson's actions may embolden other January 6, 2021 defendant and criminal defendants broadly to disregard court orders. Defendant Johnson's social media posts in question include hashtags and tags to specific people to broaden his audience. Indeed, Defendant Johnson encouraged other January 6, 2021 defendants to use the information he illegally broadcasted and normalize the flouting of court orders. Again, regardless of content, such disrespect should not be tolerated. And at the bottom here, we see Virginia home of mother of January 6 police officer swatted. J6 defendant scapegoated by far-right media since probation. And right here, so yeah, we have some information there. The government previously highlighted 3 comparable cases of how the prior recommended sentence of 12 months incarceration was appropriate. However, given Defendant Johnson's recent continuous and egregious violations, this court should look into comparable cases which are violations of protective order contrary to release conditions, offenses based on violations of protective orders and criminal histories with violations of protective orders. In United States v. Rogers, the defendant had pleaded guilty to 2 counts of bank fraud, and I'm not going to read all of this. The district court revoked Rogers' supervised release. While it is true that Defendant Johnson has not directly and physically harmed law enforcement, witnesses, or others, his pattern of misconduct during his release is analogous to Rogers. Defendant Johnson violated his conditions of release by disobeying a federal protective order and communicating thinly veiled threats. Courts have varied upwards in instances. Again, some more information there. And alternative upward variance. Should this court not apply 3C 1.1, the court should alternately vary upwards to the defendant's recommended sentence, and upward variance is appropriate when the defendant's conduct was more harmful or egregious than the typical case represented by the relevant sentencing guidelines range. Indeed, 18 U.S.C. 3553 sentencing factors counsel in favor of variance. First, Defendant Johnson's actions risk the safety of FBI special agents, confidential information, and a reporter. Defendant Johnson has, in essence, attempted to dox these individuals by publicly providing personal information with the hopes that others improperly use such information. Moreover, Defendant Johnson's actions deter persons, law enforcement or civilian, from providing information during the course of criminal investigation. Defendant Johnson's goal was to engage his online community of followers in a harassment campaign of others. This warrants punishment. Second, Defendant Johnson's intent is clear. He wishes to publicly flout the dignity and authority of this court. Defendant Johnson did not just disseminate materials covered by an existing protective order. He did so along with emails from the government emphasizing that such materials were designated as highly sensitive pursuant to this court's protective order. Consequently, he has not only knowingly violated the protective order, but has done so with apparent pride. And here we see, because Defendant Johnson pleaded guilty to 4 separate counts, the court can achieve sentencing greater than the statutory maximum of any one count by running sentences consecutively. So they are asking, hey, basically, if you won't do the upward variance, make them consecutive. And we have conclusion. In considering all the factors set forth in 3553, the court should impose a within guideline sentence of 18 months of incarceration, 12 months of supervised release, a fine of $2,336, and $500 in restitution. Such a sentence protects the community, promotes respect for the law, and deters future crime by imposing restrictions on Defendant Johnson's liberty because of his behavior. Oh boy. They went pretty hard here. I guess we're going to see how this shakes out in court, but not looking good.